say and do everything that would bring glory to God. On December 6, 1984, my 14-year-old daughter was brutally murdered, and 29 years later, May of this year, finally an arrest was made in her homicide. But before I go any further, you know, so many times when people read my bio and they hear about Oprah and they think, oh my God, she's famous, she's wonderful, and that's true. Are you laughing because it's not true, or are you in agreement with me? Okay, thank you. I should have added she's wonderful, she's beautiful, and things like that. But no man is an island. There's no way that I could stand here today before you in my right mind without the love and support of many people, but one in particular who is here tonight with his beloved wife, and that's Lee Fisher, Lee and Peggy Fisher. I'm going to ask them to stand, but I would love for you just to know that when Gloria was first murdered, I did everything I knew how to do to lose my mind intentionally. But in the distance was a man named John Walsh, and John Walsh was a good friend at that time of Lee Fisher, and I knew the work that Lee was doing with children and trying to keep them safe. So I approached Lee and asked him if he would connect me to John Walsh, because I couldn't fathom how you could live with that much torment in your life. Certainly John Walsh would have the answer. So Lee Fisher, being the kind of individual that he is, he arranged the meeting, and the day came when John Walsh was there holding my hand. And I thought, give me the magical word to make the pain go away. I'll never forget the words that John Walsh said to me, and those words have been my guiding light for the past 29 years. And he said that time is the only friend that you have. It's going to take time. So if you don't mind, may I please invite Lee Fisher up just to say some words. I wouldn't have my friend in the audience without you knowing how much I love him, who he is, and just for him saying hello, and to thank him publicly for being my friend for over 29 years.
I didn't expect this, but I never say no to Yvonne, nor do I say no to a microphone. I met Yvonne not long after Gloria was murdered. I had authored my first piece of legislation as a senator. It was Ohio's Missing Children Law, which is how I got to know John Walsh, whose little boy Adam was abducted from a Florida mall and brutally murdered. And I've had the honor over the years of meeting many victims and survivors of violent crime. And one of the things that Yvonne, more than any of those others, have taught me is that you can, as Ernest Hemingway once said, be stronger in the broken places. Anybody who loses a child for any reason, but especially through violence, has every right to withdraw from the rest of the world for as long as they want. But it takes a unique human being to show the resilience of not withdrawing, but instead reaching out to other people who have experienced similar pain. Yvonne, in some ways, is better known outside of Cleveland than she is in Cleveland. She is a national figure. And one of the greatest honors of my life was when I got a call one day from Yvonne, who said she was about to be married, and would I walk her down the aisle? Talk about being nervous. I didn't trip, and it was a beautiful occasion. And Peggy and I have been close friends to Yvonne all this time. The last thing I just want to say is this, that the greatest gift, I believe, that you can give any human being is the ability to see their own future. And Yvonne has touched the lives of people who in their darkest moments felt they had no future. And she was able, and continues to be able, to give people that ability to see something in their darkest moments, a brighter and more hopeful future.
Can we give him a hand? Thank you. And I would also just thank you, Peggy. I love her. Thank you so much. If my pastor would just stand, he didn't want to say anything, but if you would just give him a hand for coming here tonight with me. On the way here tonight, I was watching The Way We Were with Robert Redford and Barbara Streisand. I was almost late because I was waiting to hear her sing the song that just took us all to another place. Now, I know I don't look that old. Right. Well, I remember that. But I'm old enough to remember the old movies and the good time. I mean, it was nothing like Frank Sinatra and Bing Crosby and Fred Astaire and Sammy Davis Jr. and Gene Kelly. When I was a little girl, I was going to marry Gene Kelly when I grew up. I couldn't believe that he got old like that. I was like, wait. But I remember the way we were. So you can imagine when I got the call that my daughter had been murdered, I was not prepared for a shift in my life. I wanted things to stay the same. But sometimes in this thing called life, things change without our permission. So I found myself, Rabbi Caruso, longing for the way we were. I wanted the sound of her voice. I wanted her presence in our house. And time passed, and that did not become apparent any longer. I can remember very clearly standing in the stairwell in my home late one night, actually begging God to release me from this place called life. Literally, it was impossible. Oh, I'm sorry, I see another friend over there. It was impossible to live with that much pain in your heart. And I stood there as tears rolled down my cheeks, and I just said, God, would you please come to get me? The house was quiet, and no one was there to rescue me. So I began to hear God speak to me, because he does talk. And I said, I don't have a reason to live. And God began to call the roll of everything that he thought would encourage me and press me forward. And every time he gave me a reason, whether it was my other children or just anything, I would say, but that's not a good enough reason. And he kept pushing me to practice gratitude and to look into the future, to see that I could make it, but I didn't want to make it. And finally, I said, I don't have a reason. When God spoke to me and said, then I will be your reason. And from that day to this, he has done just that. He's the reason that I get up and I move forward. I didn't know some years later there would be a Lee Fisher or an Oprah Winfrey or all of the awards or anything like that. I didn't know that. All I knew was that he was my reason for living. I didn't think that I would live to see the day that the arrest was made. And I want to encourage everyone here who's been waiting a long time on an answer to never give up hope. Hope is a powerful, powerful weapon in the way that things used to be. So when we long for the way that we were, like Barbara Streisand and Robert Redford, we have to maybe come to the conclusion, as I did, that those days are no longer in existence. So the question then becomes, what do you do in the meantime? Life is so full of choices. You can fill up your life with bitterness, or you can choose to accept where you are. My acceptance came through forgiveness of someone who I never met. When I would go into the prisons and I would speak to the murderers and the rapists in large audiences, it's strange that this room makes me nervous, but I'm not nervous when I speak to 500 murderers. Now, I don't know. I'm very bold. I'm brazen in there, but I'm here, I'm like, oh my God. So nevertheless, I would always say the same thing into that crowd. If the person who murdered my daughter is in this room, I forgive you. And I really anticipated that someone in the rear would raise their hand and confess, but that didn't happen in that order. And you know what I found out recently, Lee? That the person who was arrested on May 12th was incarcerated in one of the institutions that I frequented for 4 years. So it's very likely that he was in the room. It's very likely that he did get to meet me and shook my hand. But because I was longing for the way we were, on the day that the arrest announcement was made, I thought that everything would go back to normal. I anticipated that some way Gloria was going to appear mysteriously after all of those years of being absent. But let me tell you how devastating. It was bittersweet. You think, okay, everything is wonderful, but in actuality, I was faced with another reality, that things will never be the way that they were. So when I received in this process a letter from a boy in Ghana, West Africa in 2003, and I'm skipping around. The boy said that he was walking down a dirt road in a village. He hadn't eaten for 3 days, Rabbi Caruso, and he said he shook his finger towards God and said, God, if you are so loving, if you are so kind, why won't you at least feed me? And he said he kneeled to the ground in starvation. And on the ground was a piece of paper in Ghana, West Africa, in a dirt village that talked about the murder of Gloria Pointer. Peggy, he picked it up and he wrote me a letter to say, I'm sorry to hear about your girl child. And I'm like you, how did a piece of paper get on the ground in Africa at the feet of the boy who dared to challenge the existence of God? That's been 10 years. So when I first got the letter, I said, all right, God, what do you want me to do? He said, I want you to feed him. That was funny, because at the time I was barely feeding myself. Oh, I don't know if you believe it or not, because I look so beautiful and wealthy now. But there was literally a time that I was ragged. So God said, oh, I'm going to open doors for you to speak, and I'm going to have money come to you, but it doesn't belong to you. That's funny. I want you to feed him. So this went on for several years, and finally they invited me to come to Africa. Well, that was not something that I normally do. I normally go to Akron or Alabama or Arkansas. I didn't know how to even go to Africa. So what do you do to get to Africa? But the same spirit of willingness that I brought here tonight, I brought to God on that day. God, I'm willing to go. But how do you get there? Well, I didn't have any money once again, and that's when I received a phone call from actress Queen Latifah that I was invited to New York. I was being honored. Yes, the Queen. Yes, the Queen. You know, when God said he would bring you in front of kings and queens, he didn't say that one wouldn't be named Latifah. He just said you would meet queens and kings. So she wrote the check, and I ended up going to Africa. And on this year, or last year, I don't remember, but we went back to break ground on a school that we're building in Ghana in memory of Gloria. So when God said, I'll be your reason, he had this huge platform that I couldn't comprehend. All I was trying to do was to leave here. And God said, you will not die, you will live. And not only will you live, you will go to places including Fairmount Temple. Yes. And you will cause them to live too. Everywhere you go, you're going to take life with you. Because you never know who's in the room, who's saying just what you said on that night. I don't have a reason to live. I had to not be selfish. So now as I live and I go into the prisons and they call me Mama Pointer, sometimes I'm offended because some of them have more gray hair than I do. But do you know what they do? They rally their money together, Rabbi Caruso, and they give it to me to send to Africa to feed children. So this hope, this reason for living that exists in me, it is available for all who will ask for it. I asked God one time, if you're so loving, then show it to me. All I saw was the pain and the sadness that people experience. So where is the love? And he said, oh, you want to see what love looks like, do you? Then I'm going to take you to the broken. I'm going to take you to the downhearted. I'm going to place you in front of those who you feel don't deserve it. And then I'm going to command you to love. If you want to know what love looks like, then look in the face of those who we've written off. So as I take my seat, I don't see anybody with the timer or anything. I mean, where's the clock? I'm trying to look at my hand, you know, my watch, and think, okay, that's 15 minutes. But most of the time when I talk, people are like, keep going, keep going. But I do want you to know that God is real in spite of the challenges, the obstacles, the hard times. All of it has a way of working for your good. All of it has a way of bringing you to the place when you get to come face to face with your authentic self. And it's a beautiful thing to meet yourself head on this thing called life. And you get to find your purpose and to identify with the fact that you are here as a messenger of hope. So again, I want to thank you so much for allowing me to come. And it is my prayer that in these short minutes, I've said something that will encourage you to just keep living. Thank you so much.
I can guarantee you, excuse me. I can guarantee you, Ms. Pointer, that you did speak to people here, including me. Thank you. We now join together as one people. Sometimes we feel like we're standing alone, all alone, no support, none to the left and none to the right, no one. But prayer, Jewish prayer, is most commonly done in community. So we stand together